Last week, we reported on renewed efforts by legislators to address additional criminal justice reform measures during the current session. This week, Susan Cadot moderates an in-depth discussion with advocates for those currently serving time in the criminal justice system.
Yes, Rich, we are talking criminal justice reform in Oklahoma. It's been a hot topic for years because the problem still isn't fixed. I am joined by two special guests to take a look at where we are right now in the Sooner State. And joining me are Reginald Heinz, who is the president of the Oklahoma chapter of the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice, and Ronald Skip Kelly, who is an attorney at law. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Well, it looks like both of you have gone from working inside the criminal justice system to now working with those who have been arrested. I want to ask each of you why the switch. And Mr. Heinz, let's begin with you.
Well, I worked for the Oklahoma Department of Corrections for 38 years. And during those 38 years, I held various positions all the way from a correctional officer to a warden to a deputy director. And during that time, I saw a lot of what I would call injustice or unfairness in the sentencing of people that were sentenced to the Department of Corrections. And so I just started taking a look at those things and spending more time with people who had been sentenced or incarcerated. And I just found a tremendous disparity in that, which I said something needs to be done about that disparity in sentencing.
And Mr. Kelly, how about you?
Well, Reggie and I both had experience from the Department of Corrections. Unfortunately, I didn't stay as long as Reggie did, but while I was attending law school and my second year in law school, I worked as a probation and parole officer with the Department of Corrections. And so that was my first entry into the criminal justice system on the adult level, although I had some experience working with juveniles. But because of my concern is related to the rights of individuals, I continued my journey as far as completing law school and ultimately came out and started trying to be a part of the system of representing individuals in reference to a lot of the issues that Reggie mentioned as it relates to the disparity of sentencing and trying to address those issues before judges and the district attorneys for clients.
Well, Oklahoma has the highest per capita incarceration rate in the nation. Well, we tussle back and forth, I think, with Louisiana a little bit for that spot. And so in the world, Mr. Heinz, first of all, just laying a quick foundation, why do you think that is?
I think we have some antiquated laws here in Oklahoma. And then I don't think a lot of people get good representation when they get arrested or things like that. I think there's a lack of knowledge of different things, programs and things that Oklahoma has, that information sometimes doesn't get to the people that need that particular information. And then I just think we're a law and order state. We're not a very forgiving state, even though we are supposed to be in the middle of the Bible Belt. But I think we're not a very forgiving state for crimes and things, and our policies are outdated and antiquated.
Well, Mr. Kelly, when we go back, I can remember the 3 strikes and you're out, getting tough on crime. And those are the things that kind of like what Mr. Heinz is talking about, correct?
It is. And historically, you have to also factor in the fact that we have had a disparity as it relates to race in the criminal justice system from its inception. When you start looking at the numbers today, you also have to be mindful of the fact of how did this pattern ever start? And so it's a very in-depth study that no one has really wanted to do the complete dissecting of the historical patterns of the criminal justice system as it relates to sentencing.
Well, Mr. Kelly, I have some numbers and I'm going to share it with you and with our audience. According to sentencingproject.org, Oklahoma has the highest overall Black incarceration rate. 1 in 15 Black males ages 18 and older is in prison. And according to census numbers, African Americans make up nearly 8% of the total Oklahoma population, yet represent anywhere from 25 to 35% of the incarcerated population. Are Black Oklahomans simply committing more crimes?
I don't think so. I think there's that disparity in sentencing. And then I think there's one number that you didn't look at is our high incarceration rate of females. I think we've not only been number one in the United States, but number one in the world per 100,000. And so something is wrong with our incarceration, on how we incarcerate so many people of color and then incarcerate so many females in this state. And I don't think they commit crimes at a higher rate than other races. I just think that if I watch you 24 hours, sooner or later, I'm going to catch you doing something that's in violation of the law. And then I'm going to arrest you. And then when I arrest you, not only am I going to arrest you, but I'm going to give you the highest sentence that I possibly can give to you. And when you look at the counties around Oklahoma, some counties might have 1 or 2% of people of color, but their incarceration rate of the people that they send to prison for those counties is 30, 40%. And so something is wrong with that picture when that happens.
Mr. Kelly, is that racial profiling in the courtroom? Is it intentional? Is it happening?
You know, it's a very interesting question. That I don't think that there's a deliberate intent. I believe that there's several issues that don't get properly addressed. If you look at our prison population, just based upon the percentage of African Americans per population, I think we also have to factor in and take into consideration that addiction has never been really seriously factored in as to the cause and effects of the numbers of our prison population. Mental illness, you know, if you look at the population in Oklahoma, you probably have about 40% of the men that's incarcerated have mental illness issues, 70% mental illness issues. And those factors are now beginning to be considered in a lot of the courts throughout the state and throughout the United States, because now you have mental health court, you have drug and alcohol court, you have courts for veterans who have come back from the several wars and have post-traumatic issues as a direct result of their, serving as protecting our country, and they never get the proper treatment that they deserve. And so those individuals also increase the numbers of the prison population, but a lot of it is not driven by their intent to commit crimes. They're ill, and the illness has never been properly assessed and treated.
Mr. Heinz, for you to explain for our viewing audience quickly what enhancements are if they don't already know. And then we'll also touch on State Question 805, which would have placed sentencing enhancement reform in Oklahoma's constitution, making it nearly impossible to revoke, but the voters shot that down. Mr. Heinz, what are sentencing enhancements? Sentencing
enhancements is if you have committed a crime and you are getting ready to get convicted, but you have previous felony convictions in your background, they can use those previous felony convictions to enhance your sentence. So say, for instance, if you get arrested for burglary, and Skip probably knows better than I do on this, is that the maximum sentence they can give you for burglary is 8 years, but you have 2 more felonies that you have been convicted of in the past, and you have actually served the time for those felonies. They can take those felonies and they can almost impose a life sentence on you with sentence enhancement. There have been a lot of bills that have been proposed to disallow them using those enhancements on sentencing.
Mr. Kelly, what's wrong with that? If someone's an habitual offender, what is wrong with that?
The issue is not so much what is wrong with the fact that an individual has been a habitual offender, but has the individual served his time for the crime that he committed at the period of time that he committed. So if you have an individual that committed a crime when he was 19 years of age and 10 years or 15 years has passed and the individual makes another mistake in life and is charged with a particular crime, I don't think that you should continue to punish the individual for something that happened 20, 15 years ago. If he has successfully completed that sentence, If it was a probation, then I can understand that you still have the prosecution's authority to revoke that sentence. Senate Bill 704, it makes a lot of sense. They have some exceptions in reference to the enhancements as it relates to those individuals who are sex offenders or repeated DUIs or aggravated DUI offenses that it would not apply to. But that has been a major issue in reference to in the population of people going back to prison is because of the enhancements.
Yeah, Senate Bill 704 was authored by Republican Dave Rader out of Tulsa. So this has become a bipartisan issue in Oklahoma, right, Mr. Heinz?
Yes. And you know, I tell people one thing that has been consistent with our legislature, even though if it's been Democratic control or Republican control, our prison population during my 38 years with the Department of Correction, the prison population never went down in all of that time. At one time, it kind of leveraged out 1 year, but it's always continued to go up regardless of who has been in control of our legislature. I think a lot of times, and I've had this discussion with Skip about where prisons are located in rural areas. And a lot of times that is the only social economics in that area is that prison. You got 200 or 300 people working at that prison from that community. And not only are they working there, but the prison is paying for utilities to that particular community. So the rural areas, there is no reason for them to support laws that decrease the prison population, because if that prison closes in their area, they lose that economic boost. It's
a complex, layered issue in Oklahoma. We've been trying to tackle it for years and no one has found that right answer. What say you? What should we be doing? What should be the next step?
It's bringing everybody to the table to discuss these issues. I think that many times we tend to see a lot of knee-jerk reactions to issues that had not been well vetted out by all the parties who are part of this global criminal justice system. And I think a lot of times, you know, some of the issues that we try to address them in a way in which we're going to try to rewrite the whole book. Mm-hmm. And you can't rewrite the whole criminal justice system, you know, with one piece of legislation. You know, I don't think the citizens is going to support it. And I think it's very difficult to make a change when we look at it from that perspective. So I think we have to take certain parts of the criminal justice system and address it in parcels that is meaningful and a full engagement with everybody that is part of the system.
And Mr. Heinz, what would you like to see happen? I know you're very involved with this. What needs to happen in Oklahoma to answer this question, this problem of the high incarceration rates and the high rate of incarceration for Black Oklahomans?
I think a lot of times we have the information and the data and we don't do anything with that data. But we can even look further down that data. We know what schools these individuals are coming from. We know what communities they're coming from. And so why don't we just look at what kind of programs we can put in place in those areas? And it would be cost effective to do it that way. I think it would be a lot cheaper to do it that way than incarcerating someone. But we have the data. We just sometimes don't do with it. And I agree with Skip 100%. You got to bring everyone to the table. Sometimes we have people at the table that their heart sometimes is in the right place, but they don't have an understanding of the communities that these individuals come from. And we don't allow people from those communities to be a part of the discussion on how we can solve some of these issues. They are left completely out of it. A lot of times we'll have the upper middle class people making all of those decisions, and some of them's hearts are in the right place, but they don't have a clue as to what really needs to be done. We just don't bring everyone to the table that needs to be brought to the table.
And on that note, gentlemen, this has been an eye-opening discussion. I didn't get to all of the questions I wanted to ask you, so there's definitely more to be said. I look to education funding in certain school districts in those communities. You were speaking of, Mr. Heinz, and socioeconomic conditions contributing to the end product of incarceration rates. I look forward to having both of you back to continue that discussion.